ask them to do the calculations if they're trying to do it from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's.
Dr. Lane, did you happen to see the email that I sent you and Kathleen today?
Very helpful. Thank you.
Awesome, cool. I knew that that had been up in the air, so.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Okay, well, I think we are just now hitting our time to get started here. So without further to do, I think we can get into it. We'll call the meeting to order, and then I think we'll go ahead and open up with attendance and quick introductions going around the room. This is our first meeting, kind of getting back together, our first review. Special thank you and welcome to our guests joining us for the College of Engineering fee review tonight. And I know a few other folks are joining us as well. We do have a few people absent and not here tonight. So between Evan and I, we'll be taking care of the minutes and everything there. But just to kick off introductions and going around the room, my name is Parker Volkmore. I get to co-chair this committee as student body president. I am a senior studying agricultural economics.
Yeah, I'm Evan Porter. I am the speaker of the Student Senate. So like Parker said, co-chair with him, and I am a senior studying political science.
I'm Jeremy Cameron. I'm just your average College of Arts and Sciences student senator. I'm majoring in physics and double majoring now in international and area studies. And I'm minoring in geophysics and classical studies.
My name is Jack Kennel. I am a computer science major, specifically cybersecurity. I am a freshman and I'm just a member at college.
Hey everyone, my name is Blake Phillips. I am a senior in management information systems and supply chain management. And I'm here as the Student Services Fee Committee Chair, serving ex officio.
So given the majors you listed out, I would not consider you an average student. So let's throw that out there. Ethan Erickson, Vice President, Administration Finance, ex officio.
I'm Gary Clark. I'm Senior Associate Dean in College of Engineering. Matt O'Keefe, Dean of Engineering.
Thomas Lane, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students, ex officio.
I'm Taylor Sonner. I am majoring in fashion merchandising, minoring in business and management, and I'm a junior.
I'm Carly. I'm a freshman, and my major is elementary education.
Fantastic.
Awesome. So I guess we can go ahead and get right into it. Dean O'Keefe, whenever you're ready.
Are you gonna run the slides?
Yeah, or I can give you the mouse if you want.
It's better if you.
Okay.
It'll be less dangerous, so we can go through. So if you want to go to the first slide, I can stand up or I can run it from here. If you
Whatever you're comfortable with.
like to move. I like to see it. It's my chance to lecture. I don't get to do that anymore. So I'll thank you for doing that. And thank you again for your service. Having been in student government and all as an undergraduate and going through this, I recognize this is extra time for those who are so busy, but it's also a good way to learn, right? And a good way to, and hopefully today we'll get an opportunity to learn a little bit about what we do and how we do this. So for our College of Engineering fees, to give you where it's at, right? So as you look on the website and go through, it's 105.60, right? So $105.60 per student credit hour, SCH. To make sure you'll see it at the end, and we'll thank Mr. Erickson and his crew for providing us the table that I'll show you at the end on the breakout how it's spent. But it is used for instructional faculty support and for IT equipment and support, and the support being technical support, so our people that run IT, right? And in that, just so you're aware, the IT fee started in 1992, right? So this is where some of this comes from, and it was last raised over 13 years ago in fiscal year 09 at $19, all right? So that's embedded up in this 105.60. And then the faculty support fee was initiated back almost 20 years ago, and then has built up from that point. Again, it was to pay for it to help with salaries. So as you see that from an accounting standpoint, we still actually break them out into IT fee and into the other. So when we get to that point at the end, just so you're aware, and certainly just to point out, right, and for those of you that some Jack is already seen, and for those who don't come through the building, right. We're very much an intensive for equipment as well as support and hands-on, right? So that's an integral part of all of it. So next slide, please. All right, so what I'm going to do is, before I show you the numbers, to try to give you a feel for how do we have our overall budget. And our numbers are actually out there. We put these out every year. So there's a College of Engineering fact book. And so the next several slides, most of which will come out of that, you can see where we spend it every year. So in terms of transparency, in terms of what it is, I'll show you what it is for fiscal year 23. You can go back as far as you like to see how it has evolved over time. And certainly, as you saw, it started in 92 and 03. Doesn't go back quite that far, the fact book, but it does go back, and Dean Clark can help me. I probably late 90s with Terry King or early 2000s.
Yeah, so I'm the old guy here and I've been here since then and I remember going in, yeah, it was Terry King was dean who initially put that in. And he did it because we needed to be competitive with faculty salaries, we still do, but he started the engineering surcharge back at that time, that was around 98.
So again, I think from your standpoint, again, it's your money, but and how we use it, we put it out there every year. So we're always happy to address that. So welcome to do that. Next. All right, so some of the things, these again will come out of that. So you're supporting faculty, you're supporting IT, you're supporting equipment and everything that goes to that. So over the last 5 years, which is what we have in there, to point out, right? So we've got tenured professors, right? Those have pretty much stayed the same. We haven't really changed that much. Going through our tenure track, we have decreased. We do not have as many assistant professors, normally assistant professors, sometimes they're associate. Those are ones that have startup package, they're on the tenure cycle and going through that. And that'll again be reflected in one of the numbers we'll show you at the end. But what we have increased actually is the number of non-tenure track, right? So non-tenure track are those that typically are going to be instructional. They're the ones that are going to teach classes for the undergraduate. So in terms of adjusting, and again, over the last few years, there's been some big one. And this also encompasses pre-RCM model and implementation of RCM model, along with the pandemic and everything else that has gone into that. So just be aware that intentional, we have very much made sure that our undergraduate program is the foundation upon which our college is built. We have almost approximately, you'll see about 3,000 undergraduates, 2,700. And about 300 graduate students. So we have made this doing that. Now I'll show you also the number of faculty have remained the same until this past year. We had an earlier retirement incentive package and doing some other things to reduce the number. And we didn't refill those. And we didn't refill them because of for budget constraints, but also because we've had a dropping enrollment, right? But not very much. It's not a very big change. So next slide, if you would, please. One thing also, as you've learned, there's always different ways to look at numbers. So just be aware that we even hear the term FTE, full-time equivalent. What I showed you really was the number of people or bodies that we have. There's also people then that have part-time appointments, right? So they have a quarter time. So if you look at it, we have 152 people, the equivalent is to about 149 that are actually with us, right? So again, it's a matter of trying to make sure you understand what the numbers are. You'll find that a lot in your career. You always need to ask, right? what those numbers mean. So, okay, do that. So as I said, forward number. Next slide. So, all right, one of the other things, as we said, and as Dean Clark mentioned, this was started to be competitive for salaries to try to get, keep us competitive. We're still actually below the average. We can share that with you. There are those. But over the last few years, and I just highlighted a couple of them, we have not changed any or had any salary increases for ours. And again, you can see these are high, low, and average. So they just highlighted the average. So an associate professor over the last few years did not see on average a pay raise. They stayed the same. The only way we were able to do it was this last year when we had the opportunity to do a 5% increase. Now that 5% increase wasn't necessarily all provided through the state. We had to come up with a lot of that, Mr. Erickson can tell you about. So we had to come around and do that. But we're very fortunate, very glad that we had that opportunity, and we did. So our college spent a 5% aggregate on everything to raise it. Now, again, I'll also point out, if you look through, again, the teaching faculty, the instructional faculty were actually quite behind. So on average, it was 5%. But if you look at that, that's a much larger increase for our instructional faculty over this past year, because we recognized they were underpaid, quite truthfully, and we needed to adjust. And we're afraid to lose them. They're great. They are really great. So next slide. Now, if you look at, and again, this is out of our fact book, the undergraduate enrollment for the overall university, just to keep it in mind. So we're talking about fees. and tuition to a certain extent, but those fees scale with how many students are with us. So our budget is dependent on how many students are enrolled. So if you look over the last few years, this is out of the 20th-day reports, these are K-board numbers that are reported. For engineering, right, we have dropped off. So that's part of the constraints that we have. As there are fewer of you and there are fewer fees, there is less for us to work with. So, Ethan, you're looking at
No,
it.
I was just, yeah, no.
So those are just, we just aggregate and go through that. Okay. For the actual College of Engineering, again, we mirror that. Mechanical and nuclear engineering, mostly mechanical, is our largest department. It's about 25% and it's dropped off. But I will point out, even computer science, everything has dropped to a certain extent over the last 5 years. So again, it's not that we have any one particular area, it's an aggregate of all of it. And we have to spread that out and do that. Okay. But it isn't static. So although we show what the departments are, and we haven't changed the departments, we've actually changed some of our programs within the last 5 years. So for instance, information systems actually went away. It wasn't as effective. We weren't finding it as attractive to others. And we've had things like cybersecurity now. Thank you for being here, right? So cybersecurity is one that we just added this past year. And we're able to do that. And notice, right, from the last year of this to the first year of that, we have it. And there are tremendous opportunities for students in there. Again, we'll do that with agricultural technology management. We just moved it over from ag. It was a shared program. We moved it completely with the College of Engineering. Biomedical engineering, it was just started 5 years ago. We just had our first graduating class. It's going up for accreditation this fall, next fall, I should say, to go through. Again, environmental engineering started a few years ago and it's growing. So just because you see the numbers and the department recognize some things go away and some things show up, we need to make sure that you have the opportunity to have as much of the demand when you graduate as possible. So I'm going to show you one that's not in the fact book. All right, so we also track what the other institutions do across the state and look where are we in relation to them. So that this is the undergraduate enrollment over the last several years. Actually, it's 11 years. K-State, of course, being purple, KU being blue, and Wichita State being the yellow or gold. And so if you look, we peaked in 2007 and have steadily decreased since that time. And if you look, KU and Wichita State have actually increased over that time. So we are still the largest undergraduate engineering college in the state, but not by near as much as we used to be. And we're cognizant of that. And certainly that's something we very much are trying to maintain and push forward, which will impact some of the things I'll talk about. How do we spend our budget? Okay. If you look at it in a different way, one of the things the state really worries about is how many do you graduate? So enrollment is one thing, graduates is really the objective. We want to get you to be successful and to get to move on with your career. We still maintain, although except for 1 year, that was a bit of an outlier, we're still the largest in graduate in number. And actually, if you know, we actually have a higher percentage that graduate compared to our sister institutions. And I think that's because we have invested in so many things to make students be successful. So we're more efficient. If you come to K-State, you have a better opportunity to graduate than you do with the others. But certainly from an engineering standpoint, we need as many engineers as we can get. So we're very proud of that. Excellent. So then if we go back to,
Did it go? Did I miss it?
I think there's one more. Oh, there it is. So if you look at then that graduation total and look at those numbers, keep in mind, I want to point out, those are actually the largest in college history. So we've had the largest, the last several years have been the largest ever. In fact, peaking out in 2020. So again, reflective, you saw really high enrollment. We really had a lot of graduates. If we had that many graduates, the employers and grad schools would be thrilled because there is such a demand going out. So we're again quite pleased to be able to say that. Next slide. Another aspect to this, again, out of this is what do you get paid? And what's the value of a K-State education, right? And certainly if you're familiar, these are numbers for engineering. Engineering is about 66,000. That's about a typical number for the overall average for undergraduate degrees, bachelor's degrees. So certainly nationally competitive, right? This is the national average. Here's the average salary for a K-Stater, self-reported, right? So we have more that graduate than this. But actually it's, and I didn't show it here, it's actually higher than our sister institutions in the state. So again, I would say from a value standpoint, I think we do a great job of getting students in, of being able to get you through the program. And then on the backside, employers and all see value in that. So we're able to provide a salary that is very competitive. All right, so now we're back to what's enrollment mean in student credit hours. So we only get money from the fees with the student credit hours. So we track this, right? Because that impacts our budget. We need to know this. We work very diligently in trying to predict what this will be so that we can budget for it properly. So again, looking at that peak where we had a lot of students graduate, the larger one, you know, we've gone down almost on the order of about 12,000, right? So that's over 20%, 20%-ish. So that's a huge hit for us. So as we have gone through, and I say that again, this is now part of, you know, keeping things in perspective. Remember, we went from 160 to 152 faculty. We haven't dropped 20% of our faculty. We haven't dropped that much for anything else. We have worked very hard because as we're working for it, I'm very thankful for Dean Clark and Assistant Dean Wankler. We've changed around our scholarship program, and which isn't included in this yet. We had a 15% increase in our incoming freshman class this year. So we're keeping our people and we're getting through this because we anticipate getting bigger again. And we want to, because again, we have big demand. So what does that mean? It's $1 million less in fees and revenue, plus again, additional tuition revenue in the RCM, which wasn't the case before. Before that would not have been the case. So we see it on both sides. All right. So pie charts. I know you wanted to see some pie charts. You couldn't wait to see pie chart, right? So where does it come? So there's walk you through it, right? Budget allocation. This is what we do and how we look at it. So there are some things like general allocation and use. So where does it go? And we have some other thing called the University Engineering Initiative Act, UEIA. We have to have matching for that. I won't get into it. We get money from the state to employ or to graduate more engineers, which is why we have those numbers. We have to match for that. Here's yours, right? The surcharge, and how much is it? It's about $5 million. The other way to look at it, it's almost 20% of our overall budget. So it's an integral part. It's an important part. It's that. And then I'll point out some other things that you'll look at. ESARP, this is the money that comes through for extension. And you'll see that it's an allocation. It comes in and it goes right back out. So there isn't any, it's a pass through, if you will. It's already spent. Next slide. Another way to look at it, the way I look at it, most important thing we have is our people, right? So there's two things that you could look at for those. There's your people, and then what does it take for them to operate? So just simplifying it, we spent 84% of that allocated on our people. And that's where your help does. Where does the other operating expenses include that IT support? So whether it's a screen, or new screen that comes out, or a server that goes down, or whatever it takes to do, those are the other operated, and that includes phones, and that also includes paper for printers and everything else. So it sounds simplistic, but that's the best snapshot I think we can give is how much do we spend on our people, and how much do we spend on them being able to do their job. Now we look at the overall estimated revenue, and I'll show you one real quick. The extramural, you can think that that's really predominantly our research program. So we get outside money from National Science Foundation, Department of Defense, USDA, whoever it is. That again is money that comes in and goes out. It's not something that we really have say over because it's probably most of it's part of the proposal. It's already been earmarked. There isn't any flexibility for what we can do, but we account for it. All right. So then we have the general allocation use, which includes that. Restricted use is another thing. We do testing and some other things where people will send us stuff, we'll test it, and we'll go right back out. You'll see that's the same amount on the next one. So it's passed through, much like ESARP. ESARP is actually still there, exactly the same amount comes in and goes out. But we do allocate for student equipment fees, so that's about 2%. So looking at what your IT fees generate, we dedicate it toward that. The other aspect then, and I want to point out, we're very fortunate to have very generous stakeholders, especially alumni, that provide us with, over 15% of our overall income. And you'll see that especially when we get to scholarships. So just know that that's a big part of what it is. And just for reference, the College of Engineering, I'm proud to say this, has the largest endowment of any of the colleges on campus. Again, we're very fortunate and very generous alum. And we need them.
So is all of the student fees included in the student equipment fees?
So there's that and there's that. And
Okay,
we'll break it down as we go through.
gotcha.
Yep.
Next slide.
Go ahead, please. Yes. So then how do you spend that money? So now you'll see all the different ways for student equipment, right? So that's in and out. So it was the same amount on either one. It's allocated and then we budgeted for that. Now, it doesn't work out that way. I'll show you the real numbers where you have to try to make it work, but that's how we budget for it. So we do not, back to your question, it's absolutely allocated that way. Then again, extramural, research money comes in, research money goes out. We don't have anything with that. Salaries, again, we pointed out. And so to answer your question, therein lies most of where the fees go. It goes mostly towards salary. We do have some for other operating equipment, right? That'll go into the aspects that we'll talk about and we'll show when we have that. But again, just to give you a feel for some of the things, faculty enhancement comes entirely out of the foundation. So these are endowments that pay for named chairs, those aspects to that, ones who have going. Other foundation scholarship money, that's up to 4 million. We actually increased that $1 million from the last couple of years. Again, that's not separate from all of yours, but to give you a sense of where it all comes from. Next slide. All right, so here's after all of that, I'll show you where the money goes, right? How do we spend it? So here again, this is how much we have collected the last 3 years. Right, so Parker for years. That's going through. What have we seen? Now remember, right? First year of pandemic, middle of the pandemic, kind of finishing up pandemic. So that's an unfortunate way to reference it, but that's where it's at. So what did we see? As we went, and I'll just point it out, right? Salaries, we had to find a way to keep those 150, 160 faculty and all employed. We didn't want to lose anybody. We wanted to keep everybody there again, because when we, and as we are starting to grow, we need to keep those. So that's a significant difference between those lines. And again, I'll point out, remember, it started, this one actually was the first one. This is the IT portion, just the way it's budgeted for. It was there before, so we keep track of it. So then this is the nominally 855,000 that I talked about. That's where you get 855,000. We assume we're going to be about the same this year as we were for last year. The amount then for the salaries is up here. So although it's all collected up here, we break it out into salaries and then IT. But recognize there is salary in there. Those are the people, our IT support people that all do that. And again, that was always the tap people through it. So if you look at that, and one other thing I want to point out here is notice there's a significant drop off in $1 million towards transfer for startup. Part of this money that was paid for salaries was to hire new people. That was always an aspect of what was proposed. We're going to hire new faculty to handle all of this. As I showed you, our tenure track faculty have decreased. We are not hiring new faculty. Therefore, we have freed up. This is how we're making things work. We have freed up this money that we were using for their startup packages that got them going in their research. And we're redistributing that to pay for the people that we have. And so that's the subsequent significant decrease in what you see there, right? So this is how you make it. Having said all that, the last 2 years, we've deficit spent. In other words, we've spent more to cover what we have than we've brought in through the fees. And that gets into all the other ones. We go into all of our, reserves. We go into the foundation to help pay for other things. There's anything we can do to do that. So we have spent more than that. But again, it comes back to, we have two large groups. We have the people we pay for, and we have what does it take for them to operate. We have not cut out any classes. We have not cut out any labs. We have basically not lost any people to this, and we haven't replaced them, right? Now we're getting ready to do that. Now, as we grow, we'll grow as the number of fees grow, we'll grow as the tuition grows, we'll grow as all of you grow. And again, I'll say the part of that though is there is such demand for the number of engineers on the backside, whatever, anyone we can have graduated. has tremendous career opportunities. And so it's a great thing.
So without going much further back from fiscal years 20, is that change in the like the expenditure on salary? Like you mentioned, that was partially just because of like overall financial stress from COVID and prioritizing faculty and taking care of your people. Do you expect to continue that utilization for the fee into the future, or is this just like a kind of here's where we can dip into like additional funds, or do you expect it to be consistently over $4 million?
So in the near term, it will be consistently over $4 million, because remember, and Jack can probably tell you, in engineering, your first 2 years are mostly in arts and sciences, right? So we get fees related to engineering classes. So we're not our incoming large freshman class is to the benefit of arts and sciences, because they're going to mostly take math and physics and econ. So can we change that in the next couple of years? Not very much.
So it's related more to the change in the tuition model.
Well, the tuition will get a little bit back, but again, predominantly, right, most of the tuition goes to what college you take the class in. So arts and sciences are going to see the benefit of us having a larger for the next couple of years. So back to your question, eventually, yes, it will hopefully transition over. We'll see more tuition and more fees, right, from those students taking engineering classes,
right,
which is junior and senior heavy. And then that will free up some of the other resources that we've had to pull in to cover.
So the big increase in salaries is mostly to accommodate like the transition to the new tuition model is kind of what you're saying, where we'll make up for that eventually as students are taking more credit hours in the College of Engineering.
To a certain, as long as we grow enrollment.
Right.
That's the key. To grow enrollment is really the key there. Otherwise, it's flat, or well, it's reflective of your enrollment and the numbers.
Okay. And then also the commodities expenditures is seemingly like wildly inconsistent. What exactly is that?
So commodities, and Mr. Erickson can probably better explain. I think it's less than anything less than 5,000 is considered.
Yeah, pretty much.
So-
And so it could be a variety of things. It could be travel expenses, although not much in the COVID years, but
Right.
it also is just support expenses for
So,
operating offices.
Yeah, it's everything
Paper,
from
pencils,
phones to paper.
supplies, phone.
I know in this case, this is IT heavy because this is our IT part.
Yeah,
So that's everything that was related to
Yeah.
doing online classes.
Yeah.
And getting recordings and making sure we have the sound and microphones and
Yeah.
everything. So this is, I would say that this is probably more typical going out. But again, if you're gonna have online, if you're gonna have that, we had to do that. Now we're able to maybe recover some of that with one-time money that was available, but going forward, this is it. Now, having said that, if we can free up and grow it, then we have more to invest in improving our classrooms and everything that goes with it.
And what about in the surcharge accounts of the same expenditures, the commodities and the surcharge accounts?
Right. So as you can see, we didn't
Is it
take hardly
similar?
anything out of that, in part because actually we're doing mostly online,
yeah.
right? So labs, maybe that's a better one, is we start coming back and we have to do all the lab, and the lab
Gotcha.
are not virtual anymore, and we have to buy everything. Those are significant charges that go through. And remember, it's across the entire college. So welcome back. That's a good thing. Dean Clark, anything? I know you're.
No, the last few years have been goofy.
Yeah.
I mean, just my technical term, right, but
Yeah.
it's just been odd. With COVID and the transition and the other, I guess, so I've got a bit of history with this, and it's a change from the other historic budget to the RCM budget model. So there's been those changes have come along. What I can say, because I was here when the previous team was asking for the fees. And what we've done that I will say I'm very excited about. We've made a shift from having predominantly almost all tenure track faculty who are teaching research only to a more balanced blend of instructional faculty with your tenure track faculty. And what that means is that for every dollar that you're spending on a faculty member, you're getting more instruction out per dollar. And that's, to me, very important. Because before, when we were growing so much, when you grow so many tenure track faculty, you've got to have lab space and these other, and you just don't have enough room. So this is where we're headed, and where we are, to me, is a better balance of having the right number of faculty. Now, so there's that. On student wise, I've been very concerned with the drops in students. But when Dean O'Keefe showed that other side, what we've done is produce. So we've gotten more students out the door than we ever expected. And when I go back in time to when we had high student undergraduate numbers, he mentioned that the first 2 years, so let me back up. Every student that comes into our college is a true freshman. Half of their courses are taken in other colleges. They're not taken in ours. So it's arts and science and then some business. What's changed over time is we've got a little bit more selective admissions process. So we don't deny them entry into the college totally, but we say first you need to start arts, some start in arts and sciences. We want you to be a good college student before you come into College of Engineering, because it's rigorous. So that selective admissions process dropped us like 150. The other thing that's happened is, and this was happening pre-COVID, global and international politics and economics. We lost 300, we're down 360 international students. So out of that total enrollment, 360 students are gone. So 360 plus 100, there's 500 students right there that are gone from those processes. And the other loss was the state of Kansas put in a Senate Bill 155 a number of years ago, and that they said that any student that graduates out of high school in Kansas, if you go to a tech school, you want to get a plumbing tech, HVAC tech, or auto tech degree, we'll pay 75% of your tuition. So that was another loss of students. So there's the loss, but what we've seen is continually putting out more and more grads. So and that's the production side. So, and that's also those numbers. So the total enrollment is one number to look at, but the number of grads is another, because the number of grads reflects the amount of work that the faculty are doing in the upper level classes, if that makes sense, right? And so we're maintaining that at a pretty high level. I go back 10 years, there's a thing called UEIA, University Engineering Initiative Act, that the state put on. And our goal was to go from 423 grads to 587 by this past year. Every one of those numbers he showed you the last 5 years is way above 587. So we did that and exceeded it, and they're continuing that. So that's a good thing. And we'll continue to do that. I guess my bottom line message is we're regrowing. We're 100 students up this year over last year for new freshmen. And I think we've got a plan that's gonna bring us back. So we'll get those numbers back, and the workload will still be there.
Thank you. So last slide.
I have one more question.
Oh, please.
Actually, this might be a question for you also, Ethan. What are some of the expenses under the capital outlay? Like, what's an example of something you would spend and it would be categorized as capital outlay?
So that's generally the like a computer equipment above
Yeah.
$5,000,
Above
right?
$5,000.
So you're,
Or lab
With-
equipment.
with- yeah, lab equipment.
things like that.
So
So
the server went out because we had a fire. The sprinkler system, and I asked, do we have any help? And you said, no, we have to pay for that.
Okay.
Yep, over 5,000.
I have one more question too. Maybe you're about to get into this to the last slide. But is there what's the real distinction or differentiation between the surcharge fee, the equipment fee? How is that like from your end? As a student and I'm paying an equipment fee, I wouldn't expect a lot of that to be spent on salary. Where does that come from, or what does that look like? The surcharge, understandably, and why that's increased so much in the salary. But as you're making like these decisions on where to pull this money, and like maybe more specifically, like what are these fees intended for?
Right, so again, the equipment fee was started in 1992, right?
Right.
So it's transformed into an IT. But our IT is only good if we have our IT people to implement and to do that. So that's what covers our IT specific
Gotcha.
support. So at the way back when they had IT equipment / support. So that's the support for their salaries,
Yeah,
which includes student workers and all kinds of.
yeah, I was around back then, so, but yeah, what it was, so where it came, well, I've got some value. But when it came about, so ABET is our accreditation agency, and it's a national thing. That fee came about because when the ABET team was here, they said, your lab equipment is outdated. Well, at the time, it wasn't computer equipment, it was physical lab equipment for testing and things, right? So that's why that fee was lower, and then it grew. Well, that equipment turned into IT. And so we, as time went on, and when Terry King was here and we increased that fee, there were the discussions with your peers that were here at that time was, okay, we got the equipment, but we also, the agreement was, yeah, we need to pay the people that take care of it. And that fee is, by the way, that fee is split 70-30. So 70% goes back to the individual departments that teach the courses based upon their student credit hours, and 30% is retained by the college. And so that takes care of all the, like I said, all the computers that are in our computer labs and the technicians that go in and support it. I know you're new in the college, but you'll find it's pretty darn good. And if there's an issue, it's taken care of. I'm excited when we had COVID, every one of our students, if they didn't have a computer, we gave them one to take home. There were a lot of things we did to make sure that they stayed connected. All of our faculty made sure they could work from home and continue to teach.
Any other questions on this? Because actually my last one's just a summary slide. So. Okay. So good. So thanks again. We support equipment and faculty salaries, again, largest undergraduate and here actually answering, continue to invest in IT equipment and the support services that go with it. So that explains again the salary. And I'll just again point out, until this last year, we weren't able even to give a raise. So we're very fortunate to do that. So there's embedded in that. The decrease in enrollment impacts, how much money we have to work with. But as Dean Clark said, we have intentionally made sure that it was the non-tenure track teaching faculty that we hired so that we could continue to provide an excellent undergraduate experience and program. And really, it's your success that's our highest priority. So everything we have done is to try to make the students successful. And I'll finish with this. So if you look at what would happen if it went away, right? What would happen if we didn't have this? It's the equivalent of 25 faculty. That's about, with you include that, their salary, $100,000 plus their benefits. If we didn't have this, that's how much would. Now, the other side is if we can increase that many more, that's how many more faculty we can hire, how many more people we can expand to. So again, very thankful for your time and happy to take any and other questions you might have.
Yeah, Jack, go ahead.
So several slides earlier, you talked about how there was a little piece of the pie chart with the just total college of engineering. There it is, it's right there. You have $750,000 for fundraising personnel, and I was just wondering how much money does that $750,000 generate?
So those are our people that work at the foundation. So if we go back to it, that's the $9 million. Now recognize that's over time and all of that, but that's where it goes. Thank you.
I work at the foundation.
So it helps.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, maybe to give you an idea too, we gave out $4.2 million in scholarship support, which comes from those efforts this year.
Right.
To about 1,700 students out of 2,700. We're thrilled about that.
Jeremy, you had a question?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, you mentioned that you had done some things to make it a little more selective for the College of Engineering.
Oh, yeah, admissions.
Yeah, have you done any other is there anything else that you have done aside from just defer enrollment until after they've done some College of Arts and Sciences stuff?
Oh, goodness sakes.
Like any major things?
There's a lot of stuff. So okay, I'll try to be concise, but so 4 students. One, we have a recruitment office, so one thing he didn't go into, we have a recruitment office. And we have a retention, diversity, and inclusion office. And those are all about recruiting students and taking care of them while they're here. And we spend about $1 million out of philanthropic dollars on those. They're not out of any tuition fees, state dollars at all. And that's again, recruiting students to come here, but it's also our Scholars Assisting Scholars program. So students that are in Calc 1, 2, 3, differential equations, engineering, physics 1, 2, we hire tutors and so we're helping them to get through the classes. It helps to pay for all the student workers that are in our Feed the Learning Commons. And then all those other sessions that we do. So there's a lot of money put into student support. Is that maybe where you were going, or what else were you?
I'm just more curious in like how you're making it more like selective in terms of the admissions process or like the curriculum.
So the only thing on selective one, and I it's a speed bump and not a bar. And where I'm getting with that, about 23 or 24% of this. So when we talk about the College of Engineering, we have computer science and cybersecurity, which are just like our engineering programs. We also have construction science and ag technology management. The bar is a little different for them. The math isn't as high level. Okay. But if I take the engineering programs, about 23% of our freshmen are not calc ready. So they're in college algebra and or trig, which is fine. It's just Calc 1 is our starting math course. We were getting students who were not really ready for college algebra. In previous recruiting scheme or recruiting methods on campus, we were getting students who really weren't ready to be a college major, and they were busting up, they were just filling up rooms and classes and said, look, come into campus, but learn how to be a college student first. So that's why we put this in, and we said you really need to have a 3.0 GPA in high school. And then we looked at some basic ACT scores, but GPA is a good predictor. Because if you can't do that, we felt wrong because we're taking your money. Okay, you're coming in, someone say you can be an engineering major. Not everybody can, and there's things I can't do, right? And so that's kind of why we put that in place. But we said you pass college algebra with an A or trig with a B and have a 2.5 GPA, come on in. So if you can't do that, you need to find another vocation because it's just going to get harder. So that's kind of a little bit of the philosophy of what we did and why. And so we went also over that time frame. We looked at freshman to sophomore retention. Here's a freshman this fall. Here's a sophomore next fall. It was 67%, and we're 80-ish% now. And so I'm proud of that. I'll also mention, I talked about the graduation. The other number I look at the number of students who graduate in a given year compared to the number of students in the college. It's just a metric, right? 10 years ago, that number was around 15.5%. So 15.5% of the students we had were what we saw. We're at 21 and 22%. And that's another indication of a higher quality student. But it's also an indication that we're making sure that students who can do it are getting out. Because we were seeing students who would come in and fail and fail and fail and fail. And that's just wrong. We're just taking their money. So that's kind of a little overview of what we did and why.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have another quick question here, and I might have just totally went over my head as I was taking the minutes, but could you explain again kind of what the difference is with what we're looking at here is the overall like revenue collections within the college and what exactly the budget allocations pie chart is?
So if you will, simplistically, this is what we get from campus. And if you flip ahead, so this is what we'll get from here. Then if you flip ahead, this now includes
overall
everything and the foundation. So now we add this, and that.
Okay.
Those three literally will take you up to 56 million.
Wow.
So, right. So, and again, this we don't have any control over. Actually, that we don't. And then this is all the things we've just been talking about, whether it's scholarships, enhancements, and everything else.
Okay. So then, but then the student fees we're talking about here, are they all included in the student equipment fees, or are they all included?
Part here and part here.
Gotcha. Okay.
So again, and I think if you add them up, this, and this will give you the other number.
Okay,
Right.
that we're seeing here, the 27.4.
Yep.
And this just breaks down that part, so you
Right.
can see the impact of the
Correct.
college fees
Right.
and.
And again, this is the way we normally report it. right?
Yep.
So it's kind of, for lack of a better, this is kind of what we have control over, and the other one includes the other money when we say, well, how much is your overall budget? Well, it's 56, but we don't have control over the significant part, the foundation part we do, but even foundation recognizing Dean Clark works on it. A lot of our scholarships are specific. You have to be a mechanical engineer and doing this.
From Barton County.
Right.
Yeah, we're trying to avoid that, you know, all too well. We're trying to get it just like. So,
Gotcha.
so
That makes
that's
more sense.
that's exactly it. So yeah, there's two numbers. One you have control over, which really we get from campus, and the other one comes from external sources.
Gotcha. Are there any other questions on anything? Okay, we will, we might cook up some more questions.
Sure.
And we'll get those forwarded to you as soon as we have them, so you
Okay.
can have a chance to respond to those at our next meeting, but
Okay.
we will have more questions then also.
Okay.
Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate the
Yeah.
presentation. This was very helpful and informative. Cool. Do you have anything else really?
I didn't really have anything else to
Cool.
add. Next meeting, same time next week.
See you guys.
It'll be a Q&A. Yep. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add before we adjourned about participation, how they felt it went? Any general, just right off the bat, thoughts about if we feel like the fee is being used appropriately?
There were good questions asked.
We will put together after this meeting, probably be sent out tomorrow, the minutes from our discussion today, as well as a link to the recording. So it'll just be a YouTube video from today's meeting. As well as we'll either probably just ask for questions from you guys, maybe have a form, but probably won't be that formalized. But we'll ask you guys get any questions you have off the bat. To us so that we can provide those to Dean O'Keefe so they can prepare. So especially if you have questions as you kind of look back through the presentation of any like specific things that they might need to research, let us know if you have
Something
those.
else that will include, Blake shared with us as soon as the meeting started, the original PowerPoint from when the fee was proposed. So this was the presentation that the deans gave 3 fiscal years ago. So this will be a good reference for what they were proposing the fee for. Because that's really what our purpose here is to decide if they are spending the money the way that they said they were going to spend the money. So I'll include that if you want to just run through that quickly before our next meeting, so you can kind of get an idea of what they were thinking they wanted to spend the money on, and then based on everything Dean O'Keefe told us this evening about how they have been spending money. But yeah, Jack, go ahead.
Could you send out this PowerPoint?
I will send that. We'll compile all of this and send it out tomorrow with the minutes and the link to the meeting and everything.
Jack, I didn't realize you were one of the 26 pioneers in science.
Not in there technically.
Okay.
Ah,
So to come.
I will be transferring into- what is it?
cool.
27 then.
27.
That's awesome. Well, in the meantime, before our meeting next week, please feel free to reach out with any comments. And again, we'll ask in the email, but specifically questions you have ahead of time. But otherwise, thanks for again taking the time to be here. We appreciate it and look forward to seeing you all back here, same time, same place next Tuesday. But otherwise, if there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned.
Well done.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Augie.
Dr. Lane, when you want me to come to your office, pick that
Thank
up?
you.
Mine,
I can go now.
Yeah, you bet.